The hospital room was silent, save for the soft beep of the heart monitor. I stood frozen, my gloved hands hovering over the chart, as Ethan's fingers brushed mine. Deliberate, warm, electric. In that fleeting second, the sterile walls of my world crumbled, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. My name is Dr. Nathan Harper, a 32-year-old physical therapist in a small, conservative town in upstate New York. I'd built my life on routine, crisp white coats, predictable patient schedules, and a carefully guarded heart. Ethan Carter, 20, was just another name on my roster, a college athlete recovering from a torn ACL. Or so I thought. His chart described a routine case, but his eyes, sharp and searching, told a different story. From our first session, I felt a pull I couldn't name, a current beneath his easy smile that made my pulse quicken. That touch, though, his fingers grazing mine as I adjusted his brace, was no accident. It was a spark in a room full of kindling, and I was terrified of the fire it could ignite. I stepped back, clearing my throat, my face burning under the fluorescent lights. "Let's focus on the exercises," I stammered, avoiding his gaze. Ethan just nodded, his lips curling into a knowing half-smile that sent a shiver down my spine. I'd always known I was different. Growing up in a town where church bells rang louder than free thought, I buried that truth deep. My parents, devout and well-meaning, would have called it a sin. My colleagues, with their casual small-town gossip, would have called it a scandal. So I locked it away, choosing solitude over risk. But Ethan, he saw through me. In every session, his questions grew bolder, his glances lingered longer. "You ever let yourself feel, Doc?" he asked once, his voice low, teasing, but piercing. I laughed it off, but inside, I was unraveling. Our sessions became a battleground of restraint and temptation. Ethan pushed boundaries with every word, every look. He'd talk about his life, his football dreams, his fights with his overbearing father, the way he felt trapped in this town. I listened, drawn into his world, sharing more than I should. I told him about my late-night runs to clear my head, my love for jazz, things I hadn't shared with anyone in years. Each conversation chipped away at the wall I'd built, and I hated how much I craved it. One evening, after hours, Ethan showed up at the clinic unannounced. The waiting room was dark, the staff gone. I was finishing paperwork when he knocked, his silhouette framed in the doorway. "I couldn't wait till tomorrow," he said, stepping closer. His voice was raw, urgent. "I need to know if I'm crazy, Nathan. Tell me you feel it too." My heart pounded, torn between fear and longing. I should have sent him away. Instead, I let him stay. We talked for hours, the lines between doctor and patient blurring into something dangerous. He spoke of his fear of being himself in a town that wouldn't accept him, fear of losing his future. I saw myself in him, the boy I'd been, hiding behind duty and denial. When he reached for my hand again, I didn't pull away. His touch was a lifeline, pulling me toward a truth I'd spent years running from. But truth comes at a cost. The next day, a nurse caught us lingering too long in the treatment room, our hands brushing as I helped him stand. Her eyes narrowed, and I knew the whispers would start. In a town like this, secrets don't stay buried. I could feel the weight of judgment closing in, threatening my career, my reputation, everything I'd built. Yet, as Ethan looked at me, his eyes full of defiance and hope, I wondered if I could keep pretending, or if I even wanted to. The days that followed were a blur of tension. I avoided Ethan's gaze during sessions, but his presence filled the room. My colleagues began to notice subtle glances, hushed conversations. I overheard a receptionist mutter about inappropriate behavior, and my stomach churned. I was a respected professional, but one wrong move could ruin me. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about him, his laugh, his courage, the way he made me feel alive for the first time in years. One night, unable to sleep, I drove to the lake on the edge of town. The water was still, reflecting the stars like a mirror. I sat on a bench, wrestling with my choices. Ethan had crossed a line, but so had I. I could report him, distance myself, save my career, or I could face the truth and risk everything. As I sat there, lost in thought, headlights cut through the darkness. Ethan's truck pulled up, and my heart stopped. He stepped out, his face lit by moonlight, and said, "I knew you'd be here." In that moment, I realized there was no going back. Ethan walked toward me, his steps deliberate, his eyes never leaving mine. The lake stretched out behind him, a quiet witness to the storm brewing inside me. "You can't keep running, Nathan," he said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "Not from this, not from us." I stood, my hands clenched, the cool night air doing nothing to calm the heat in my chest. "There is no us, Ethan," I said, my words sharper than I intended. "I'm your doctor. This," I gestured between us, "it's not supposed to happen." But even as I spoke, my resolve wavered. His presence was a magnet, pulling me closer despite every warning in my head. He stepped forward, closing the distance. "You think I planned this?" he asked, his voice breaking. "You think I wanted to feel this way about the one person I'm not supposed to want?" His honesty hit me like a punch. I saw the fear in his eyes, the same fear I'd carried for years, fear of being seen, of being judged, of losing everything for a truth too heavy to hide. We sat on the bench, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. He told me about his life before the injury, how football was his escape from a father who saw him as a disappointment. "He'd kill me if he knew," Ethan said, staring at the water. "Not just for this, for being me." I wanted to tell him it would be okay. But I knew better. This town didn't forgive difference. I'd seen it in the way people whispered about the few who dared to be themselves. I shared my own story haltingly at first. Growing up, I'd learned to hide who I was, to smile through Sunday sermons about sin, to nod at my father's lectures about being a man. I'd chosen medicine to help others, but also to bury myself in work, to avoid the questions I couldn't answer. Ethan listened, his hand resting close to mine on the bench. When he finally spoke, his words were soft but firm. "You don't have to hide anymore, Nathan. Not with me." That night we crossed another line. Not a touch, not a kiss, just a promise, unspoken but real, to stop pretending. But promises are fragile in a world that watches your every move. The next day at the clinic, the air was thick with suspicion. A colleague, Dr. Larson, pulled me aside. "People are talking, Nathan," he said, his tone clipped. "You need to be careful with that Carter kid." My stomach dropped. I nodded, muttering something about professionalism, but inside, I was spiraling. Ethan's sessions became torture. I kept my distance, my words clipped, but his eyes followed me, searching for the man he'd seen by the lake. I wanted to tell him I was trying to protect us both, but every glance felt like a risk. Then, one afternoon, he showed up with a bruise on his cheek. "My dad," he said quietly, avoiding my eyes. "He found a letter I wrote. Didn't send it, just wrote it. About you." My heart sank. The letter was vague, he said, but enough to spark his father's rage. I should have reported it, called social services, done something. Instead, I let him talk, let him lean on me. He spoke of running away, starting over somewhere no one knew him. "Come with me," he whispered, half joking, half serious. I laughed, but the idea lodged in my mind like a splinter. Could I leave? Could I walk away from my life for something so uncertain, so dangerous? The rumors grew louder. A nurse saw Ethan leave my office late one evening, and by morning, the whispers were a roar. The hospital administrator called me in, her face stern. "We've had complaints," she said. "Nothing concrete, but enough to raise concerns. You need to keep your distance from Ethan Carter." I nodded, my throat tight, but I knew distance was impossible. He was under my skin, in my thoughts, in every quiet moment. That night, I found Ethan waiting outside my apartment. His eyes were red, his voice raw. "I'm done hiding, Nathan," he said. "I can't keep pretending I'm someone I'm not. Can you?" The question hung between us, sharp and unyielding. I wanted to pull him close, to promise we'd figure it out. But fear of losing my job, my life, myself, kept me silent. He left without another word, and I stood there, alone, wondering if I'd just lost something I'd never find again. The days without Ethan felt hollow, like the world had lost its color. I went through the motions, treating patients, smiling at colleagues, but his absence was a weight I couldn't shake. I'd pushed him away, thinking it would save us both, but all I felt was regret. Then, a week later, he was back in my office, his leg braced tighter, his expression guarded. "I need you to sign off on my recovery," he said, his voice flat. "I'm going back to school. Football's done, but I need to move on." I nodded, signing the forms, but my hands trembled. This wasn't just about his knee, it was goodbye. I wanted to ask about the bruise, about his father, about us, but the words stuck in my throat. As he stood to leave, he paused. "You're a coward, Nathan," he said softly, not cruelly, just stating a fact. "You're scared of what you want, and it's killing you." His words cut deeper than any scalpel. He walked out, and I sat there, staring at the empty doorway, knowing he was right. I tried to move on. I threw myself into work, took extra shifts, avoided the lake. But Ethan's words echoed in my head, a challenge I couldn't ignore. I started questioning everything. My career, my life, the walls I'd built to keep myself safe. Was safety worth this emptiness? I spent years hiding, but for what? A life where I couldn't look in the mirror without flinching? One evening, I found myself at a local diner, the kind of place where the coffee's bitter and the regulars know your name. I wasn't expecting to see Ethan there, but there he was, sitting alone in a corner booth, staring at a cup of untouched coffee. I hesitated, then walked over. "Mind if I sit?" I asked. He looked up, surprised, then nodded. We talked, not about us but about everything else. His plans to transfer to a college in Boston, my love for old vinyl records. It was easy, like breathing, and for the first time I let myself enjoy it. When the diner closed, we walked to the parking lot, the air crisp with the promise of fall. "I'm leaving tomorrow," he said, his voice quiet. "I wanted to see you one last time." My chest tightened. I wanted to tell him to stay, to fight for this, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I drove him home. The ride was silent, but his hand rested on the console, inches from mine. When we reached his house, he leaned over and kissed me. A quick, desperate press of lips that stole my breath. Before I could react, he was gone, disappearing into the dark house where his father's shadow loomed. The kiss haunted me. Couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. The hospital was a minefield now. Every glance felt like an accusation. A colleague mentioned seeing Ethan at the diner, and I saw the suspicion in her eyes. I knew I had to make a choice. Keep hiding or face the truth, no matter the cost. I tracked Ethan down before he left for Boston. He was packing his truck, his movements quick, almost frantic. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice wary. I took a breath, my heart pounding. "I'm done being a coward," I said. "I don't know what this means or where it goes, but I can't let you leave without saying it. I feel it too, Ethan. I always have." His eyes softened, but there was pain there too. "It's not that simple, Nathan," he said. "You've got your life here. I've got mine. And this town, it'll destroy us." He was right, but I didn't care. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about the consequences. I stepped closer, my hand finding his. "Then let's leave," I said, the words surprising even me. "Together." He stared at me, torn between hope and doubt. "You'd give it all up? Your job, your life?" I nodded, my throat tight. "For you? Yeah, I would." It was the most honest thing I'd ever said. But before he could answer, headlights swept across the driveway. His father's truck. Ethan's face hardened. "Go," he whispered. "Now." I wanted to stay, to face whatever came next, but his eyes begged me to leave. I drove away, my heart in my throat, knowing I just changed everything. The next morning I called in sick, something I'd never done. My apartment felt too small, the walls closing in as I replayed the night before. Ethan's kiss, his whispered warning, the fear in his eyes. It all churned inside me. I told him I'd leave, but could I? My life was here, my patience, my reputation, the safety of routine. Yet the thought of losing him, of returning to that hollow existence, was unbearable. I drove to the hospital not to work, but to resign. The decision came in a rush, like a dam breaking. I typed out a letter, my hands shaking, and left it on the administrator's desk. Personal reasons, I wrote, knowing they'd guess the truth. Gossip travels fast in a small town. By noon, my phone was buzzing with messages. Colleagues, friends, even my parents, their voices thick with concern. I ignored them all. I found Ethan at the bus station, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He was leaving for Boston, his ticket clutched in his hand. "You shouldn't be here," he said, glancing around nervously. But I saw the hope in his eyes, the same hope I felt. "I quit," I told him. "I'm done hiding. I meant what I said last night. I want to go with you." His breath caught, and for a moment we just stood there, the world fading away. But the world doesn't stay quiet. A shout broke the moment. Ethan's father, storming toward us, his face twisted with rage. "You think you can just leave?" he bellowed, grabbing Ethan's arm. "And you?" He turned to me, his voice venomous. "You're the reason he's like this." I stepped between them, my voice steady despite the fear. "Let him go," I said. "He's not your property." The confrontation drew a crowd, their whispers a dull roar in my ears. Ethan pulled free, his eyes blazing. "I'm done, Dad," he said. "I'm not your perfect son. I never was." His father lunged, but a security guard intervened, pulling him back. Ethan grabbed my hand, and we ran, his bag bouncing against his side. We didn't stop until we reached my car, breathless, hearts pounding. We drove in silence, the weight of what we'd done settling in. "Where are we going?" Ethan asked finally, his voice soft. "Boston," I said. "We'll figure it out from there." He nodded, his hand finding mine on the gearshift. For the first time I felt free, not from fear, but from the need to hide. We were two men, flawed and scared, but choosing each other over the safety of silence. Boston was a new world. We found a cheap apartment, a cramped studio with peeling paint and a view of a brick wall. It wasn't much, but it was ours. I took a job at a small clinic, starting over as a nobody, free from the shadow of my old life. Ethan enrolled in college, chasing a degree in art, something his father had called a waste. We built a life, piece by piece, learning to navigate love in a world that didn't always understand. But the past doesn't let go easily. Letters from my parents arrived, pleading for me to come home, to fix myself. Ethan's father sent threats, then silence, which was worse. We leaned on each other, finding strength in quiet moments, cooking dinner together, laughing over bad TV, stealing kisses in the rain. Each day we grew braver, more ourselves. One night, as we lay in bed, Ethan traced the lines of my hand. "You ever regret it?" he asked. I thought of the life I'd left, stable, safe, empty. "Not for a second," I said, and I meant it. He smiled, his eyes bright in the dark, and I knew we'd made the right choice, no matter how hard the road ahead. Life in Boston wasn't perfect, but it was real. Ethan and I carved out a space where we could be ourselves, where love didn't feel like a crime. The city buzzed with possibility, its streets alive with people who didn't care who we held hands with. But freedom came with its own challenges. My savings dwindled, and Ethan's part-time job barely covered his tuition. We fought sometimes over money, over fear, over the weight of starting over. But every fight ended with us closer, our hands intertwined, our promises renewed. One spring evening, we walked along the Charles River, the water reflecting the city's lights. Ethan stopped, pulling me to a bench. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice serious. My heart raced, bracing for bad news. Instead, he pulled out a sketchbook, its pages filled with drawings of us. Moments I hadn't realized he'd captured. The lake back home, our first kiss, the bus station. "I'm showing these at school," he said. "My professor thinks they're good enough for a gallery." Pride swelled in my chest, mixed with awe at his courage. His art became our anchor. The gallery show was small, just a local spot, but it felt monumental. I stood in the crowd, watching strangers study Ethan's work, their faces softening as they saw our story in his lines. One drawing stood out, a sketch of me, my face lit by moonlight, titled "The Man Who Chose Himself." Ethan caught my eye across the room, his smile shy but proud. In that moment, I realized we weren't just surviving, we were building something beautiful. The past still lingered, though. A letter from my mother arrived, her handwriting shaky. She didn't understand. She wrote, but she missed me. She asked to meet, to talk. I hesitated, then showed Ethan. "Go," he said. "Not for her, for you." So I did. We met in a quiet cafe, her eyes searching mine for the sun she thought she knew. I told her my truth, unapologetic but gentle. She cried, but she listened. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Ethan's father was another story. He showed up unannounced one weekend, his face older, harder. He demanded Ethan come home, said he'd fix him. I stood by Ethan's side, my voice steady. "He's not broken," I said, "and he's not yours to control." Ethan's hand found mine, his grip tight. His father left, his threats empty in the face of our resolve. We didn't see him again. Years passed, each one a step toward something stronger. I became a partner at the clinic, my days filled with patients who reminded me why I'd chosen this path. Ethan graduated, his art gaining notice, his name in local papers. We bought a small house, nothing fancy, but with a garden where Ethan sketched and I read. We fought for our place in the world, for the right to love without fear. Some battles we won, others left scars, but we faced them together. One night, under a sky full of stars, Ethan proposed. Not with a ring, but with a drawing. A sketch of us older, laughing, surrounded by a life we'd built. "I want forever with you," he said. I said yes, tears in my eyes, knowing forever had already begun. Our wedding was small, just friends who'd become family, in a park not unlike the one where we'd first dared to be honest. As we danced, the world felt right, like we'd finally found our place. Looking back, that touch in the hospital room was more than a line crossed. It was a door opened. It led us through fear, through loss, to a life neither of us could have imagined. We weren't heroes, just two men who chose love over silence, courage over safety. And in that choice we found meaning, a life not just lived, but felt, deeply and without regret.